So it is just hard. We love these kids. We want what's best for them. We worry about like if they have a runny nose and if they got their assignment in. Of course, we're going to worry about their future, where they're going to spend their life, if they're going to be hurt. So I think the combination of love, of judgment, and then of fear can really just make it so hard for our hearts.
Welcome to A Theology of Hustle. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, and follow me at Theology of Hustle on Instagram. Now, let's get to work. Y'all, Jamie Finn is in the house. Jamie, what is up? It's good to see you.
Hey, Currey. Yeah, always happy to chat with you.
I love it. There might be some people who have not seen your work. So do you mind just giving us the quick bio as we kind of get started here?
Sure. Yeah. So first thing, I am a wife and mom, and I'm a mom to 7, which I like to say is the stupidest number of kids. I have 2 biological kids. 4 were adopted through foster care, and 1 is currently in foster care. And, you know, it was never some big grand plan for my entire life to kind of revolve around this space of foster care, but that's what happened. So welcomed our first child a little over 11 years ago and started writing about that, which turned into sort of sharing our life in the internet, which turned into practically serving foster families. So I founded and I'm the president of a nonprofit called Foster the Family, which serves foster and adoptive families. I've written a few books about foster care. I founded a conference for foster moms. And so now like work and ministry and life is all sort of centered around this space of helping people who've welcomed vulnerable kids into their home. So
I love it. I love it. We have come across each other in doing this work sort of over the years.
Great.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I love it. I just had a quick question. Why do you say that 7 is did you say stupidest number of kids?
Yeah. Because if you have 7 kids, you don't ask that question.
Okay,
It is stupid. It is a stupid number. It is, we don't fit in one vehicle. We don't fit at one table. We can't go out in public. We have 15 years between ages. I'm up in the middle of the night and up until midnight choosing homecoming dresses. It is too much. It is stupid.
Okay, gotcha. Just wanted to clarify, but it's very biblical, like the number of completeness,
Come on.
So
No, stupid. I prefer stupid. We could get biblical about it. Let's just call it stupid.
Okay. Sounds good. I'm here for it. I have 3 and it feels overwhelming to me. So adding 4 more feels like I would melt down.
Stupid. So. Yeah. No. Yeah. And okay, let me give my little, in case you don't know me, deeply love my children, fully committed to them, live life with joy and peace, blah, blah, blah. Stupid, but yeah.
I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot, especially that 15-year gap.
Yeah,
is part of the hardest part of that.
For sure.
We have a 5-year gap between our, middle and youngest. And it is like, they're just in different worlds.
Start over of it. Yeah.
To be out of diapers and then have to go back in is ruthless.
Well, so we've actually never, which is another stupid fact, never been out of diapers. So I started diapers about 17 years ago and have never stopped. So we have a 2.5-year-old. We will soon be out of diapers, and I will never change another diaper for as long as I live.
So pray for Jamie is what we're saying.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. Let's kick off and just kind of walk through your story a little bit. I know you gave us a little bit of a glimpse there. Can you just talk about kind of getting started? You kind of, how do you kind of get started in the whole blogging world and all of that?
Yeah. So welcomed a child into our home, and we were the first family within our church, maybe 1,200 people or something. And the first family in our church to step into foster care.
Okay.
There was one, kind of, I would say, stereotypical single foster mom who attended sometimes. So I had this picture and I immediately ran up to her and was like, be my friend. But there wasn't like a family who had other children and deeply involved in the life of the church. And so a friend of mine was starting up a newsletter for our church, and said, will you write something about foster care? So here I am with my like 3 months of experience and all the enthusiasm and passion. And so I wrote something about foster care and I gave it to him. And he said something like, this is really good. You should put this on the internet. And so I did, and I didn't tell a single person. I just put it up and I kind of started this little blog. And within like a week, millions of people had read it.
What?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
It happened that it is, I can talk strategy on social media and marketing engagement and knowing your voice and all of that. I don't know what else to say except that God had determined this plan and he just made it happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I wrote this thing. I read it and I'm like, okay, it's good, but I brought really no life experience. I brought
Right.
no expertise. I had no sort of diversity of my experiences. I had this one kid that I had welcomed. So I didn't deserve a platform, so to speak. Like there was no reason that people should be listening to me. And I had a platform. And so the only way that I knew how to do it, and the only way I still do it. So 11 years in, I'm like Miss Foster Care. You could call me an expert now. I am still just living out loud, stumbling and struggling and confessing and sharing what I've learned. That's what I started doing 11 years ago. And it's what I'm still doing now. It's just, hopefully, I've gained some wisdom and experience, but I'm never coming with like, here's what to do. I'm coming with, oh my goodness, here's what God is doing in my heart. Here's how I'm wrestling. Here's how I'm learning. And so I just started sharing that way 11 years ago and sort of built this platform. And I'm sorry that people were listening because I didn't know what I was saying, but God has used it. And so it's a cool story for me to look back on.
That is awesome. There's something to the foster and adoptive world. And I'm thinking back on mine and JJ's experience in Replanted. We were leading a support group before we were in the adoption process when we started leading a
That's right.
support group.
We are just so hungry and thirsty for help. We're like, wait, are you offering help?
Yeah.
Especially 11 years ago. So
Yeah. Yeah.
11 years ago, I was scouring the internet. I was literally typing in like gospel foster care. And that's how I, quote unquote, met my now dear friend, Jason Johnson, because it was really the only thing that was there. And I
Yeah.
read every book and none of it was really a Christian perspective on foster care. And so I think when I started sharing, even though there was a lot that I lacked, that was what I brought. I was like, we're going to talk about foster care. We're going to talk about the gospel. And there was just a whole community of people who were hungry for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you almost need that early stage, like being excited about foster care and adoption. Cause as you get into the journey, the energy dissipates pretty quickly. It can be kind of a grind, and you almost need that kind of a upfront,
Like
really go get it. Yeah.
naivety,
Yeah.
enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Yeah, my husband and I keep joking that we're going to be closing our home eventually New Jersey will close our home because we're already over capacity, but that I'm going to change my platform to trying to convince people to not become foster parents. That is now the new platform. I'm going to go travel the country and speak on stages to be like, please don't ruin your life. Again, I hope people.
Yes. Yes.
I'm
People.
like losing everyone.
Everybody's like,
When this go
what is
off.
she talking about? Yeah. Do as I say, not as I
Yeah,
do,
yeah,
sort of thing. Yeah. That's the interesting part about it. And maybe why so churches, I mean, we both agree. I don't even know that we need to say like fostering and adoption is the heart of God.
yeah,
This is what God has called us to do in this world. There's just no question, right?
yeah.
That we even
Sure.
have to explain that. And it's one of the hardest things that you would ever do. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. And, as much as we say, like, okay, this is at the heart of God, we don't even need to explain why.
Yeah.
The reality is that a lot of the church is still just coming awake to that.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so it
Yeah.
does need an explanation. And as we're in it, it is so hard that we have to daily, constantly reorient our hearts to our why, which is the gospel. Otherwise, it is like, truly you can look and say, like, what did I do to my life? Well, what I did to my life is I laid it down as a living
Yeah.
sacrifice. What
Yeah.
I did to my life is I followed my Jesus and took up my cross and denied myself and followed him to the people and places that he loves. So we have to keep reorienting to the gospel because it is so impossibly hard to just have the motivation of like cute kids. Because guess what? When they're up in the middle of the night or they're throwing things at you and saying you're not my real mom, they're less cute. And we really need like a theological undergirding of why we're doing this to keep us in the fight, because it is a fight.
Yeah. I love that. I appreciate that very much. So let's do it. Let's talk a little bit about the why behind it. I mean, this is obviously an outworking of your faith, correct? Like, so how did that all kind of come about? What sparked in you in order to have that realization?
Yeah. So I think that we were kind of in this very comfortable one boy, one girl, happily ever after. Where are we going to dinner this weekend? That was sort of what life was surrounded around. And um, I read a book called Radical by David Platt, and it just kind of
Mm,
set my heart on this. We are missionaries. We are ambassadors. We are on this earth to do gospel work. What is that? And the answer isn't for everyone foster care and adoption, but that
right.
answer, it demands to be answered. So
Mm,
we really just went to God's word and we're like, oh, God's heart for the vulnerable, the orphan. It is just so clear. I mean, father of the fatherless, protector of widows, like he calls himself that. It is
mm.
so central to who he is. So my husband jokes that he agreed like one kid, one time, knowing that it wouldn't work. And he could say like, okay, did that. I did my little thing and let's move on. But in it, I think the harsh reality that it's not just cuddling cute kids, and that parents aren't like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for how you're serving my family, and you're fighting for love and a restorative perspective that sees redemption. It's in being a foster parent and in being sort of in the hard of foster care and adoption that has kind of informed my theology, even more than my theology initially informing coming in. It's being in and it being so challenging that I've had to like, well, what is God's heart for this? Because when I look at mom, I'm like, oh, I don't think that you should be parenting this kid that I love dearly. But when God looks at the family unit he created and this whole thing that he, whole, it's now been broken, but this whole picture of the family unit, I need to align my heart to God's heart for the family, to God's heart for first parents and kids. And so it's really taught me to have a theological perspective.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you were talking about how doing the work actually informed your theology, right? So they like play on each other. So there's the theology of the work, like the why behind it, but then the doing the work actually like informs the theology and they work together. I mean, that feels like how it should be,
Well,
right?
yeah, it's like working out your
Yeah.
salvation.
Yeah.
It's just the figuring out. And so I've, been transformed by the renewing of my mind. Like as I face all the hard things in foster care and adoption, it brings me to hard questions, which then brings me to God's word to seek the answers.
Yeah, I love that. I appreciate you talking about that because it is a lot of times only through that work,
Yeah.
doing the work, and sometimes we miss that piece,
Yeah,
right?
you're like, I have to be ready.
Yeah, 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 exactly. That's good stuff. So let's. I feel like I don't get to talk about adoption and foster care too much on the podcast. Can we just talk about some of the nuances? I feel like there's still a lot of misunderstandings about
Mm,
foster care, adoption. What are the differences? And like a lot of people get into foster care to adopt, right? They
mm,
they say these words, foster to adopt.
mhm.
I'm assuming that you have some things to say about that. So can we
Yeah.
just kind of talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I want to say that anytime someone enters a space where they want to love and care for a vulnerable child, that is deserving of honor. And so when we're talking about the nuance, it's not with like a how dare you. I used the term foster to adopt. In fact, I thought that adoption was the happily ever after, the thing we were fighting for, and that reunification was sort of this unfortunate byproduct that happens sometimes, and that more that that grieved God's heart and should be um, avoided and grieved. So let me just say, I fully get it. When we are saying yes to foster care, what we're saying yes to is playing a part in a child and a family's healing. And I think that that's really important when we're coming into foster care, that we are saying yes to a restorative, redemptive process of a family being healed. That is really God's heart. I mean, the theological, goodness, we're going to talk theology, the theological
Love it.
implications of the family, of the fact that marriage was literally created as a picture of Christ's love for the church, that within the Trinity, there is a family, there's the Father and Son. Like everything we know about family is just to reflect things about God's
Mm,
character, which means that it is weightier than just, is this person a good mom? Is this dad going to do a good job? We have to come with this weight of what the family is, and even see that, like, God created beautiful, whole things, and sin broke what God created. Well, why did Jesus come? Jesus came to restore what sin has broken. He
mm,
came to make whole things that were ruined by the curse. So, gospel centered foster care doesn't mean just that we tell kids and parents about the gospel. It's not just we try to get everyone saved.
yeah.
It's that we actually live out, walk out why Jesus came to earth, to make things new, to bring healing, to bring redemption. That is why we follow him into this. So that's sort of the undergirding of the why. Now the what. It means that we pray for parents, that we root for them, that we support them practically, that we help them, that when we have a voice, it is not to tear down, it is to advocate for, that Christians should be the most pro biological parent voices in the whole system. That when we see weakness, we're like, oh, I'm weak. When we see sin, we're like, well, I know what it's like to be a sinner and I have a great savior. That we are the last ones to throw stones. We are the last ones to believe that change can't happen, that nothing will ever be different. So it changes the way we talk to kids' parents, and to kids about their parents, and to workers about their parents. And it just changes all of our interactions to loving, supporting, praying for, as we try to adopt God's heart for the family.
Yeah. I love that. I think, yes, so much yes there. And that's like some really hard stuff, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, and it goes against everything that we want to do. Why is it that you feel like that is such a hard thing for us to
Oh.
desire?
So, first of all, we love these kids.
Yeah.
So, when you love them and you know that someone mistreated them, you know that they didn't receive, again, back to God's intention, what God intended for them to receive from their family, it's heartbreaking. I think it brings righteous anger, even. So, we have this like, oh my gosh, how could you? This is so hard. And then the reality is, it is not very often that parents are like, I'm so happy that my kid is with you and that they're doing great without me, and that maybe they're calling you mom and saying they're happy. Like, oh my gosh, can you imagine just the devastating emotions that are tied up in this for them?
Yeah.
So that can lead to accusations. It can lead to divisiveness. It can lead to really hard relationships. So it is just hard. We love these kids. We want what's best for them. We worry about, like, if they have a runny nose and if they got their assignment in.
Yeah.
Of course, we're going to worry about their future, where they're going to spend their life if they're going to be hurt. So I think the combination of love, of judgment, and then of fear can really just make it so hard for our hearts.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. And I just have to say, like, we've never done foster care. We've adopted our youngest, but, never walked through the foster care journey, but in walking with a lot of people. I mean, when you get into these situations and these are real people and tangible people,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
it is so different than what you think it's going to be, I guess,
Mhm.
getting into it. Right.
And the more you lean into relationship with the
Yeah.
person rather than ostracize and sort of demonize this report that you read on a paper of all the ways that they've failed. Like, imagine if every failure of yours was listed on a paper. And so when you see them as full people
Yeah.
and really try to hear their stories and love them as people, I think it starts to break down some of that in your heart to bring love. But we were talking about foster care and adoption. So I do want to address
Yeah.
this because I,
Yeah.
I know there are going to be butts in people's minds and hearts because there are in mine. The reality is that we've adopted 4 kids from foster care,
Yeah.
that I've testified against biological parents. I've advocated for kids to not be returned. So the reality is that kids are in foster care because they experienced really hard things, either from their parents or their parents didn't give them what they should have. And so that's a reality. And so if we have the foundation of love and support and prayer, then it helps us come to the reality sometimes that this child needs to be protected, even from their parents, that children need permanency, that they deserve families, that that's God's beautiful intention for kids to be in families, even if it can't be their first families. So I think it's important we have the foundation of understanding of first family and loving biological parents. But then that has to hit the reality of some parents are just so stuck in cycles of trauma and sin and addiction that they're not going to be able to provide a safe and healthy life for a child. And that's when we thank God that we do have
Yeah.
systems in place to find forever families that can say yes to these kids forever. So love foster care, love adoption, believe that both can be restorative and redemptive, but they both just need to be informed by God's heart. And both of them are beautiful displays. Restorative foster care and adoption are both beautiful displays of the gospel, as long as it just takes a lot of wisdom
Yeah.
and a lot of humility and prayer.
Yeah. And it's messy, right? Because it's
It's
just
so
there's
messy.
brokenness. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Good. I appreciate you jumping into that.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like we have a similar heart and like wanting the church to do, this gospel thing. Right.
Yeah.
And not informing people about what they're getting into does not help that.
No, such a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, the worst thing we can do is just be like, Christians, go do this.
Right.
And then the church to be like, we hope it goes well. Like,
See you later.
right. Like,
Yeah.
no, we need to be
Yeah.
informing and serving and helping and come alongside before, during, and after.
Yeah, amen. That's good stuff. We got way off of your kind of story train here.
Sure, sure.
Let's get back to that. So I really fascinated, but so this first blog post
Yeah.
blows up.
Yeah.
What are you thinking? And what were sort of the next steps once the reality hit, I guess?
Yeah. So what I wasn't thinking is, oh, I'm not qualified for this. I should put the brakes on. I was just like, man, I'm along for the ride. And, I see God's sovereignty in that. Even though maybe there was a lack of wisdom. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to keep sharing. And so I was sharing and writing and then it started to open up some opportunities to speak and share in front of people. And so I found myself traveling to these places and talking about foster care in a heart to serve foster parents in their local community. And then just had this conviction of like, well, I'm not serving foster parents in my local community. So what does it look like to sort of take this platform and also just take my heart to serve foster parents and live it out at home. So I kind of put on Facebook, want to start this support group. 45 women showed up and I was like, okay, I think there's a need here. And I am a little bit of a catalyzer, like, let's do this, let's go. And so now we had these women who were in the trenches of foster care and adoption meeting together. And the question became, how do we organize people around them to serve them? So every day I had people walking up to me saying, oh, I've always wanted to be a foster parent, but I can't because of this. And so I'm like, so there's this whole community I know of people who are desperate for help and support. And this whole community I know of people who are saying, I have a heart for this mission and I want to help. And so what does it look like to be the connector there? What does it look like to say, like, oh, you have a kid showing up at your doorstep with 2 pre-made bottles and a onesie. Okay, you can go shopping and make dinner and all of that. And so Foster the Family was essentially born out of that reality. And it became just, how do we connect the two communities and how do we create this community of support and mutual care and togetherness. Like I said, I was the only person in my church. And I felt a lot of isolation and confusion. And the people in my life were like, yay, go. But they didn't know how to help me. They didn't know how to encourage me. And I felt alone and confused. And so just really kind of built a passion to support people really practically first. And then from there, I just have a heart for connecting foster and adoptive parents to gospel truths. And so just kept writing that way and speaking that way. And so books and the conference and all of that were born out of that.
Yeah, I definitely want to hear about all that and like walk
Yeah.
through all the hats you wear. I'm just like thinking of the learning curve. So when was that first blog post? What year was that?
It was 11 years ago.
11 years ago. So I'm thinking of the learning curve of uh throwing out a blog post on maybe WordPress or so. I don't know.
Oh
I don't
yeah.
even
Of course it was
old school.
WordPress. 11 years ago. That's all we had was WordPress.
I did a
Yeah.
similar thing with JJ. She wanted to start a blog, so I'm like, I guess I got to learn WordPress now.
Yeah.
So you're throwing out a blog post on WordPress to building multiple organizations, like learning how to do marketing, like wearing all these hats. Talk to me just about the like practical learning curve of building something like that.
Yeah. So there are a lot of gaps in my leadership and abilities. Um, a couple of the strengths are that I love new ideas. I love starting things.
Mm.
So often the starters are not the finishers. They're not the
Yes.
ones that keep it carrying. So that's where the weakness comes in and where I needed to, oh, what does it look like to have someone step in here and really carry this now?
Yeah.
But I have always gotten excited about new ideas. I've always sort of had an entrepreneurial spirit. My dad was an entrepreneur. My brothers are entrepreneurs. So that was just kind of in us. I don't know if you're into the Enneagram, but I'm a 7.
I
I have eight.
assumed. I
Yeah,
assumed.
yeah, exactly. I have ADHD, which I think probably all 7s do, but that's a different story. And so there was just this like, there's a need here.
Yeah.
There's a community here that needs things. Like, we're going to jump in and do this. And it was just the enthusiasm for like, let's go rent a space and then we can fill the space with all this stuff. And then, okay, all these people are saying they want to help. Let's build a volunteer team. Okay, now let's create a schedule of how they do this. And okay, I'm going to these retreats and I love these parts of these retreats, but I feel like the real centrality of the gospel's missing, or I feel like I love the creative piece of this, but it needs more of the. And so I'm like, let's do it. Let's just, I find someone, I'll do one, and I'll come to yours, and let's just do it. And so I think a lot of it was built out of enthusiasm, out of passion. I mean, I've always really had this drive to live for eternity. Always had this like, you only live YOLO, but in a gospel sense. Like, we get this one life. Let's
Yeah.
spend it up for what matters. And what does it look like to be tired at the end of the day because I'm running the race? And so since then, it's been learning a little bit of what does it look like to rest as worship? And what does it look like to entrust some of your ideas to other people? And so there's been other lessons, but I do have this true like driving force to spend up my life like this life is really short and like eternity is forever, and to live for heaven. And so it was just this, okay, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I have 3 kids. Like, how can I use the space and money and time to serve others and live for Jesus? And so a lot of just drive.
And how did you avoid burnout and all of that?
Wait, are you assuming that I avoided burnout?
Well, I don't know. I just wanted to approach the question from that angle,
How
with
did
that
I
assumption.
navigate
Navigate
through
burnout.
the crispiness of
Yeah.
being burnt?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question. I will say that everyone has strengths and weaknesses, and you are going to bring your weakness into your strength and your strength into your weakness. And so I think the weakness of my strength is I had no idea how to avoid burnout. I had no idea what that looked like. So what it's been for me is when I become burnt out, being able to shift direction and being able to bring the right people alongside me. So I would say I have navigated being burnt out and then realigning what the new path is multiple times. And this year, I think maybe in a new and different and truer way, in a way that's maybe stuck, because the burnout was so extreme, because it was at work and at home
Yeah.
in a way that I couldn't push through. Like I often am sharing with foster parents just of the idea of God's strength in our weakness, and we're called to glory in our weakness because it's where we find God's miraculous strengthening. And what I'm learning is part of glorying in your weaknesses is just falling in on your face before God and saying, I'm weak and I'm going to stop just pushing through that weakness
Mm.
and hacking it and finding new solutions. But I'm just going to say, I'm actually weak right now. And the way I'm going to glory in that and be strengthened by you is to slow down, is to offload things, is to rest. And so I don't think I'm a model of that. I think that by the grace of God, I'm learning it. And I've maybe learned it in a different way than I have before recently.
Yeah, I appreciate the transparency there because I feel like it's easy to look at people who have found success in whatever that they
Yeah,
do and
sure.
just like, oh, that it must have been super easy and everything kind of fell into place. Even your first blog post, I mean, like that doesn't happen
Yeah, sure.
to most people, right? And so it just seems like maybe it's easy to tell a narrative or not tell a narrative. It's
No,
people
yeah.
easy for people to think that there is a narrative of just ease, and then
It's
when
such a good question.
and then when people struggle with their own work, it's like, why am I struggling when it seems like all these other people don't struggle, right?
It's so true. Yeah, I think it's why it's such a great question because it's not just this upward trajectory of
Right.
building. It's a lot of like tearing down and rebuilding. It's some handing off to other people who can build better than me.
Yeah.
Um it has been okay, there are other things that I'm called to, but the one thing that I always know that I'm always called to as a priority is my relationship with Jesus,
Mm.
my relationship with my husband, and my relationship with my children. And so if those things are suffering, it might take a radical reorienting, um, and taking care of myself so that I can be available to do those things. So it's been a journey. I appreciate the question.
Yeah, and I appreciate the transparency and you being willing to talk about that. It's yeah, because I mean, you're doing all this stuff and parenting little
Yeah,
ones with trauma,
yeah,
and that's some real stuff right there.
for sure.
That trauma don't play.
No.
Yeah, maybe we could just take a short little aside here into kind of trauma and I don't know. I feel like there's this sense that I'm always trying to break down with foster and adoption that just like, if we could just get them into our homes and like love these children, that everything's going to be
Yeah, yeah,
okay,
yeah.
you
They
know?
just need a family. They
That's right.
just need love.
That's right. And that we want to think that. And like
Yeah.
so many people get into it thinking that that's all it takes.
Mhm.
And um, I guess don't realize that there's another level of education that maybe needs to take place on how to what trauma does to the human brain, that sort of thing. So can you just talk to me a little bit about just how you talk to other parents about the role of trauma in foster and adoption?
Yeah, yeah. So there is these really complex realities,
Yeah.
and we can simplify them with some just very basic realities as well, which is that when kids are exposed to abuse or even more to neglect, when they experience chronic stress, that it actually changes their brain chemistry to kind of live in a fear state. So the systems that are kind of like giving us that alarm of, oh no, you're in danger, something is wrong. So think about, you're driving and you almost hit a car and you slam on your brakes and you're like and you can't bring yourself down, and you're safe.
Yeah.
Right? In that
Mhm.
moment, I am safe. I'm safer probably than I was 5 seconds ago when I was distracted. I am fully safe. My pupils are dilated. My heart rate is up. I'm breathing heavy. Maybe I have goosebumps. Maybe I'm getting a bellyache. That is the reality of how too many of our kids live all day, every day. So trauma is formative to human beings. It is especially formative to young human beings. So, pre-verbal trauma, before it can be interpreted by language and sorted and understood, is devastating. Neglect, when a brain and body is being formed, is devastating. And so, kids who have experienced trauma, kind of the simple understanding is that too often they are living in a heightened fear state where they do not feel safe when they are safe, because too much of their life has been lived unsafe. And so they are unable to bring themselves back down from that 5 seconds after you almost hit a car feeling. And that means that me saying no to a cookie could trigger in them things about going hungry for 2 days at a time while mom was stuck in addiction. Me, leaving them in their safe bedroom where nothing bad has ever happened could lead them to memories or just this feeling of being alone, being abandoned,
Mm.
being dark, scary things happen at night. You know, it's the reality that what our kids experienced before they came into our homes plays on their brains, bodies, beliefs in a really powerful way. And so it shifts from this first time obedience, happy heart, authoritarian sort of method of parenting that a lot of us grew up with in
Yeah.
Christian homes,
Yeah.
and which kind of worked, right? And maybe even worked with our biological kids to, oh, I am fighting this battle against these unknown, scary things that are playing out for my child. And so my goal is to help them feel safe, for their nervous system to be in line, for their brain to be integrated and not flipped into a fear state. And so it changes our approach to helping our kids feel safe. And I think that that is sort of the best, like, 2-minute
Yeah.
explanation of trauma and then how it plays out in our homes.
I totally agree. I appreciate that. That I've never heard that sort of beginning part of like that, stress response basically.
Yeah, yeah,
I really, that is a really helpful way to understand it. We've taught a lot of, trauma informed parenting classes throughout the years. And I always used to stand in front of these people and, the idea is like, hey, my parents parented me this way and I turned out all right. And my
yeah.
line was always like, are we sure about that? You know what I mean? Like,
Did you?
did you? I don't know. Like, there's just an assumption off the bat there that everything's fine. You know, I mean, we all
Yeah.
have our stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, like, just even this idea that there is something to be learned no matter where you're at,
Yeah, that's good.
you know, I
Yeah.
think is good. So I appreciate that. That was a tall task I gave you there. Okay, so I feel like we haven't run down through like everything that Foster the Family does, and
Yeah.
so can you just kind of give us an overview of all the things going
Yeah.
on, where people can get resources, and I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So my heart, probably more than anything, is to connect people to gospel truths.
Yeah,
And so in this space, it's foster and adoptive parents. So I've written a few books. I wrote a book called Foster the Family that really is just like almost a topical, okay, here are all the parts of foster care and how does the Bible speak to them? So the word trauma is not in the Bible, but what does the Bible have to say about parenting our kids through this trauma lens? Visits and reunification and the court system, those things aren't in the Bible, but there are really rich truths about, for example, the fact that like God holds the heart of kings in his hands and he is the great judge and he loves justice. And so, what does it look like to navigate a justice system, a court system that is unjust? And so, just applying the Bible to all of the realities of foster care. And then Filled is a devotional for foster parents. And it's really just like me in my devotions, like, oh, these are the verses that have spoken to me and carried me through foster care. And then I just released, actually, a couple of weeks ago, a book called God Loves Kids, a trauma informed, gospel centered book about foster care. And it's really just either for kids in foster care, kids in foster homes, like biological kids or adopted kids, or just kids who want to learn about foster care.
yeah,
And it's essentially like God had this great love for kids and this great plan for families. Sin messed it up, but God is a God of redemption. He calls his people to help these kids and families, and he's writing a really big, really good story. And so, because it's hard, man, you sit down to write a book for kids who've experienced devastating things,
yeah,
and you're like, well, what truth applies to every kid in every situation, no matter what? Is it that you are going to have a happily ever after? Is it that you are going to be reunified? You are going to be adopted? Like, no, we can't
right.
promise any of those things. What can we promise? God loves you. He is the kind of God who writes good stories. And so I wrote it for my kids and I wrote it for other kids who are experiencing the same thing. So those are my books. And then I love to speak to foster and adoptive parents. And so founded the Filled Gathering, kind of similar. This does sound, again, like this upward trajectory. And I apologize because there's a lot of heart in it. But the first gathering was 80 women. And last year was 1,300. It's the biggest gathering for foster and adoptive moms. And we now are having like virtual tickets and local events, and it's really just how do we bring gospel hope to moms and trauma information and really practical help, but then how do we like bless the socks off them? Like, how do we create these moments of just like laughter and fun and rest and community? And it is the most special, important part of what I get to do.
I love it. That sounds awesome. So much going on, and you're doing like nonprofit work and like supporting foster parents in other ways too. Is that true?
Yeah, yeah. So Foster the Family, we part of what we do in our local offices is literally show up at the doorstep of families right after they have a placement, with everything that they need for, we say the first 24 hours, it's more like the first week for this kid, clothes and a meal for the family and an invitation into our support groups. So we have 100 support groups around the country where more than training, it is minimal training, it is community, it is mutual support, it is these are your people. And so there's a video of me talking about something for 15 minutes, but that is the least important part of being there. The most important part is just getting to be with other foster adoptive parents.
Yeah. That's cool. That's a lot of hats. I will make sure all those things are in the show notes so
Thank you.
people
Yeah.
can go check that out. That's good stuff. And make sure and follow along, right? Social media and all the things. I'll make sure it's all in there. That's good stuff. Well, you could jumping into our final two questions as we wrap up here.
Yeah. So happy to.
Awesome. So my first question is, what is the strangest job that you have ever had?
The current job of of trying to offer people encouragement and support as I am often discouraged and needing support. It is just the epitome of being in the trenches and jumping into other people's trenches. And it is the most beautiful, most important, and strangest job that I could imagine, for sure.
I appreciate that.
How
I
many
was like
people
that.
give that? How
You
many
know,
people, when you ask that, they're like, my current job? Yeah.
there's a few out of
Okay.
the 170 or so. I think I've probably gotten that 5 or 6 times,
Okay.
So, yeah, I love it. I think that's a great answer. You're living in the strangeness,
Yeah.
is a good thing. So,
Yeah.
okay. So my final question is, what is one piece of advice you would give to somebody looking to bring God's kingdom more into their work?
I love that. I would say to see people,
Mm.
as whole people. So whether you are a consultant or you're in business or whatever the things, everything we do is about the glory of God when we do it for his glory. But also everything we do is kingdom work
Mm.
when we see that it is for and about people. So even when you're stuck behind a desk looking at numbers, there are people on your team. There are people that those numbers represent. And what is the greatest commandment? It's to love the Lord our God, which we can do in our work. We can do sitting behind our desk 9 to 5, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. So how can you love your neighbor? How can you see people as someone that Jesus died for, someone that has a whole story, and that God is working in and writing for them, someone who needs the gospel, either needs to be saved or needs the hope and reminder of the gospel. But whatever we're doing, we can make it about people rather than just the work.
That's good. I love that answer. Jamie, thank you so much for making time for me. It was great to hang out.
It was. I loved it. Thanks, Currey.
Thanks so much for hanging out and listening to A Theology of Hustle. Make sure that you like and subscribe, all the things, and follow me at Theology of Hustle on Instagram. My hope is that this podcast just encourages you in your work, whatever that may be. So until next time, get out there and hustle.